Well, one billionaire helped out the Orioles. Can we get a second billionaire to bail out the A's?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, there's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I am now starting my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been a podcaster for well over a decade, but I've been having fun, and we're going to have a great season this year on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hey, follow us on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're, please subscribe to us. You can see my mug on YouTube. If you're watching us on the YouTubes, hit subscribe. You'll know when something like this happens. I'm doing yet again another live episode. I like doing these live episodes. There's a certain energy to them. I can't screw up. Sometimes I'll edit some of the other ones. I drop F-bombs. You don't know it. I had a lot of fun with Ethan Smith on the last show. I didn't do a show yesterday, and I'll address that in just a second. The trivia question I had, because he's the big, and did I mention big Pittsburgh Pirate fan of Locked On Pirates? The question was, what future Hall of Famer threw the complete game victory that clinched the 1979 NLCS, the last time the Pirates went to the World Series? And a couple of you got it right, but I'm going to, Court Stell answered it and brought out one of my all-time favorite Chris Berman nicknames. It was Bert B. Home Blyleven. Bert Blyleven, who took like 13 or 14 tries to get into the Hall of Fame. And back when I was just a blogger, I was a blogger before I was a podcaster. One of my most intricate blog entries was about Bert Blyleven, who at that time I realized, yeah, this guy is a Hall of Famer. And I went through one of the reasons why it took him so long to get into the Hall of Fame, while other pitchers like Don Sutton and Gaylord Perry got in like that, or got relatively quicker than Blyleven, was the fact that they were all 300 game winners. And I took a look at his career, and I picked one no decision and one hard luck loss from each of his years that he pitched, and said, if I'm not taking every bad luck game, just one from each year. And if half of those went one way instead of the other, he would have sailed past 300 wins and would have been in the Hall of Fame instantly. But that's how it works. We're doing this live, and I see we already have a bunch of people who are watching, and we have some comments. And hey, Justin Lamas says that probably needs no Rutschman in LA in the near future. Yeah, let's get to that for a second. I was going to do a podcast yesterday, and I decided not to, because there was a gigantic announcement that came out, but it also wasn't confirmed. And your pal Sully, that's me, I felt a little bit weird to be someone trying to jump on. I'm first, I'm announcing it first or something. There was the news that maybe, just maybe, somebody bought the Orioles, but no one was confirming it. And I was going to do one of those, well, if it's true, this or that, but call me a little gun shy. After, remember a couple of years ago where I made the podcast like, hey, look at that. Carlos Correa signed with the Giants. Hey, look at that. Turns out it wasn't the Giants, it was the Mets. Hey, look at that. Turns out it wasn't the Giants, it wasn't the Mets, it was the Twins. I didn't want to do that again. But it looks like it's going to happen. And Oriole fans rejoice because it looks like the Angelos family is going to be selling the Baltimore Orioles to David Rubenstein. Is it Rubenstein or Rubenstein? I've only read his name. I've never said his name out loud until just now. For approximately 1.7 billion tomatoes. $1.7 million will get you the Baltimore Orioles these days, which is a lot more than the Angelos family paid for it way back when. This is gigantic because it's coming true. This is gigantic. Now, Rubenstein is someone with a big financial background, and obviously you don't get to $1 billion by selling Girl Scout cookies. You get to $1 billion because there's something, I don't know, you're basically something's going to happen here. People are going to look into his past. People are going to look into, oh, do you know his business did this and that was bad and this and that was bad, and yeah, he was part of one of those businesses where he was like a Gordon Gekko, taking a company and ripping them apart, Blue Star Airlines, and throwing it back out there. Yeah, that's what he did. And already I'm starting to see people say, he's a bad guy. He did this and that. Let's all just create the following generalizations. Athletes are going to tend to be politically conservative. Artists are going to be politically liberal. And owners of sports teams are going to be billionaires who probably did something not great to get that billions of dollars. If we all just accept those, then we can just enjoy our entertainment a little better. Okay? There you go. I have no doubt that his resume is filled with a couple of people whose businesses went, I thought I was going to do something. He's a billionaire, okay? The road to $1 billion is never fun. Trust me on that. When I earned my first billion, I made some mistakes. But this is what the Orioles fans have been begging for literally a generation, maybe even more. The Angelos family have been making Oriole fans pull the hair out of their heads. The Orioles were at one point one of the great proud dynasties in baseball. Look at between 1966 and 1983, the frequency that the Orioles were in the playoffs, in the World Series. They won 3 World Series in that period of time. And they played they won the 66, 70, and 83 World Series title. They were in the 69, 71, and 79 World Series and were constantly in the postseason as a division winner or anything. They were tremendous. And then pretty much right around the time the Angelos took over, look, it was over. Now, the Orioles play for a rabid fan base. Baltimore is a wonderful sports city. They played in what was basically a big market until the Washington Nationals showed up. But remember, the Washington Nationals were also, what's the word I'm looking for? Horrible for a long period of time with no deeply rooted fan base. Everyone I knew who grew up in Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C. were all Oriole fans. And suddenly this team where there's deep-rooted fans in Maryland, highly populated area, great sports city, suddenly couldn't make it to the World Series. They haven't played in the World Series since 1983 and had long stretches where they just forget win World Series, long stretches where they couldn't put a winning product on the field. And now they're one of the bargain basement teams. Only the Oakland A's have a lower payroll than the Orioles. And there have been infighting amongst the family members. It's ugly. And Oriole fans are angry. They play in one of the absolute great ballparks. They're one of the ballparks that started the ballpark revolution was in Baltimore. And there have been more World Series played in Tampa Bay in the Tropicana field than there have been in Camden Yards. And that's remembering the fact that Tampa Bay also played in the COVID World Series, which they didn't play any home games, not in LA or Tampa. But we've had 2 World Series games played at Tropicana Field, and we've had 0 World Series games played in Camden Yards. The greatest moment in Camden Yards is still the Cal Ripken Jr. breaking Lou Gehrig game. Now, that's one of the great baseball moments of the last 35, 40, 50 years, to be fair, but a World Series appearance would go a long way. And the one thing, if you talk to Oriole fans, and Lord knows I have, the main thing you hear from Oriole fans is it's management, it's management, it's management. Well, guess what, folks? Happy days may be here again. And there's a couple of reasons why this ownership may have, oh, I don't know, the fruits of success faster than others. What are we talking about now? I'll tell you exactly what we're talking about now. This is the time of the year where people do their betting polls for that big, big game that's coming up. And I would recommend you contact our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And if you're ready for the Super Bowl and you want to see if the Chiefs can defeat the 49ers, or if the Lions will come up with any explanation why they didn't try to kick those field goals, or Bills saying, hey, don't talk to us about field goals. Super Bowl Sunday is going to be about scoring the best seat in the house, having some chili, like chili, maybe having a hoagie, I like my hoagies, and placing some super bets. Now, FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or two or three. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, I'm going to root for the 49ers. Don't get mad at me. But FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so many more. So new customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit fanduel.com/locked-on to sign up. That's fanduel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. This is a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our new national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I'm going to plug another one of the Locked On shows. Connor Newcomb, friend of the podcast, is the host of Locked On Orioles. I was hoping to get Connor on this show, but he had a little veterinarian emergency with his pet, and I wish him luck because, look, I get it. I got my dog Eleanor. And she, by the way, Eleanor is super excited for the season, in case you're wondering. So good luck, and you'll be on the show pretty soon. We got a lot to talk about here. I've been listening to his show. If you want to get some really in-depth Oriole perspective on the new ownership situation, check out Locked On Orioles. He's had a couple of really terrific shows about it, and we will see. Absolutely, we'll see. But there is a well, do you want just? I'm going to go to one of Justin Lamas's comments that he has here because he's going. It's let's set it up. He said Baltimore can finally keep their stars, spend in free agency, and trade their excess prospects for win now pieces. Justin, you're on to something. Because think about what this year happened with the Orioles. The Orioles had the best record in the American League. They won 101 games. All those prospects that happened from when they stunk are starting to bubble up, and they haven't even called up Jackson Holiday yet. But the Adley Rutschmans of the world, and the you have Grayson Rodriguez is on the squad right now. Mountcastle's there. Anthony Santander is hitting big home runs. Gunnar Henderson is there. They have a young core of players who are pretty exciting. And with Jackson Holiday, possibly the best one of the bunch, you can see that the team that is being purchased by the Rubenstein group already is a good team. It's not like they're purchasing a garbage team. It's already a playoff team. It's already a team with one of the deepest farm systems in baseball. It already is a team that's a playoff team. And one of the things that became one of the reasons why I got so angry at the Orioles at the last trade deadline, I'm a broken record about this, but I was angry at them because they had excess prospects. They had more prospects than they had spots on the team. They had glaring needs on their pitching staff, and they were obviously going to be a playoff team this year, in a year where they didn't have to worry about the Red Sox, a year they didn't have to worry about the Yankees. That the AL Central was sort of parting, or the AL East was parting open for them, and they could have gone on if they had reinforced their pitching staff and be a real, and did I mention real contender to win the American League pennant and get that monkey off their backs. And one of the reasons why there was a sense of urgency was what Justin Lamas was just insinuating about. They had an ownership that is so notoriously frugal that Baltimore, not a small market, Baltimore, not a tiny market, I'm sorry, was the second lowest paid team in baseball. Won 101 games, but there was a knowledge that the nanosecond that any of their high quality players like Rutschman, etc., were going to ask for, I don't know, a raise or to be paid what they're worth, that they were going to be traded faster than you can say Manny Machado. And they would be dumped. And Adley Rutschman would go to the Dodgers, and Grayson Rodriguez would go to the Mets, and it'd be all a mess. And Oriole fans would be stuck, oh God, we're rebuilding again. Because I thought their window of opportunity was going to be about 3 years. 3 years, because that's when they would start hitting arbitration. Here we go. New management in here, billionaire owners who, I made the point about, like, I don't know what they did and how the scrupulous they've been to earn their billions, but the Rubenstein has had a great reputation of spending lots of money for helping improve the Washington Monument, spending money on museums and cultural centers. And he's from Baltimore. Yeah, he lives in Washington, D.C. He's from Baltimore. So he likes to be the person to say, hey, look how rich I am. And look at how great the Washington Monument is. You don't think he wants to be the guy in Baltimore? And think about what a small hurdle he has to leap. He has to be more loved than the Angelos family. Not a hard trip. That means if he signs the Rutschmans, he signs the Grayson Rodriguez, those young stars, the Jackson Holidays, to long-term deals now, kind of doing what the Braves did, which is keeping their stars to the long-term deals and saying, hey, like what the Detroit Tigers just did when they they signed what's the name of their kiddo? They just signed one of their top young players to a big long deal. You're starting to see that was that's the thing to do when you have a good young player, to be like, hey, let's keep our squad together. They could do that now. And if they raise the payroll, I'm not talking about match the Dodgers. Get to the middle. Get to the middle. Keep those players now. Get to the middle, and suddenly the Orioles can be a team that is a buyer, a team that suddenly isn't a like, well, they're just going to trade their players away at all times. This is seismic, because another thing that happens a lot of times is ownership likes to show off and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that." Oh, yes, Colt Keith. I'm sorry. I knew he had a name that sounded like an old time cowboy. But there you go. But first look at the day. Sure, it's easier said than done. And as Justin Lamas just pointed out, a lot of those big players are Boras clients. Fine, great, but you can still make the right moves and at least go into it without the resigned feeling of they're just going to go away. They're just going to go away. At least there's the possibility of that. And when we're getting to the point where they can sign for big contracts and maybe pay them earlier rather than later, maybe you have a team where players would want to go to Baltimore. The Orioles team that wins and wins big there is going to be beloved like nothing else. Yes, it's a big football city and they love their Baltimore Ravens. I understand that. I'm not foolish. However, we've had Baltimore Ravens Super Bowls recently. They're foaming at the mouth for an Orioles World Series championship. And this ownership might very well be the one to bring it in. At least you've removed that Jenga piece of negativity of, well, we can't win because the Angelos won't do that. They're gone. Now, big spending doesn't necessarily always mean victories or a championship. The Mets spent like drunken sailors and they didn't get them far. But at least you get the sense that the management is willing to do something. And wouldn't that be more fun? Well, everything's more fun than being an A's fan. And we're going to get to the fact that something may be happening with the A's that is an absolute disgrace. So let's take a quick look at our friends at eBay Motors. Hey, wait a minute. Where's my eBay Motors banner? Oh, when you do a live thing, you don't always have everything in front of you. But there we go. Look at we need to take my timing of this ad read to the shop. But passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. eBay Motors, ride or die. There's an article I read on in Sports Illustrated's online, which I know Sports Illustrated is no longer what it used to be. I do grant you that, but it sounds like there's a possibility, at least a strange, surreal possibility, that one of the quote solutions unquote for what is happening with the Oakland A's is to, obviously we've talked about, would they play a year or two in Utah? Would they play a year or two in Sacramento? I think they should ditch, if they have to move from Oakland, and boy, oh boy, it does not look like they're going back to Oakland. I would ditch this Las Vegas nonsense and try out Portland. Okay? But it's also clear that after their lease runs out in 2024, which, in case you're keeping score at home, is this year, they don't know where they're going to play next year. And wherever they play, you're bringing in a lesser amount of money than you would be playing in Oakland. And the chances of them putting a competitive team on the field by the time they land in Las Vegas is very thin. But also, there's no stadium in Las Vegas, and it's not really clear where the stadium's going to be. I mean, here we are. It's 2024. The bell is going to ring, and they don't have a strategy. And one of the strategies that has, one of the solutions, I put that in quotes, that has been floating around is maybe contract the A's for a couple of years. Have a couple of, this was written about in SI, and it was also mentioned in several other news outlets, that the possibility of, well, just don't have the A's for a couple of years. Just have 29 teams. Just have 29 teams. No A's. And that way, the A's can save up some money. So by the time they go in there, it's like a mini expansion after a tiny contraction, which, of course, would be a nightmare on scheduling, because now you don't have enough. You have an odd number of teams. But But then you also just disband a team, even temporarily. They didn't do that with the Expos. When the Expos were in that horrible situation where Major League Baseball themselves had to buy the team. Even then, when all when all hell was breaking loose with the Montreal Expos, even then they kept playing. It was a fiasco, but they kept playing, and they actually contended in 2022 and 2023 with Frank Robinson at the helm. They were wildcard contenders into September, even though they weren't allowed to add to the team because they were owned by the other 29 franchises. Conflict of interest, anybody? But even then, they kept playing. Of all the things, of all the craziness in the history of the A's, the Mack family keeping poor Connie Mack sitting in the dugout when was becoming senile, when Charlie Finley or the Johnson family owning the team in Kansas City and treat them like a farm team for the Yankees. Charlie Finley looking to move the team anywhere in creation, landing in Oakland, almost immediately want to leave him there and being a crazy owner. Billy Bean, creating the gospel of let's be cheap. After all of that, we have Fisher saying, well, at least thinking, what if we just scrap the team for a little bit? We haven't scrapped it. Teams weren't scrapped in the Great Depression. Teams weren't scrapped after the strike. Teams weren't scrapped during the Second World War. But maybe we'll scrap a team because we didn't plan. And no, they didn't plan. There is no plan to say, oh, well, a couple of things fell in our way. The things caught up. What did this catch you by surprise? Was the end of this lease a surprise to the A's? There is no plan for a team to play baseball in 2025. And we still don't know where the stadium is going to be. We still don't know how it's going to be or where it's going to be played. And we all know if you put essentially a minor league team in Las Vegas, to think what the locals are going to be coming out to see a crummy product in a new stadium, as if there's no other entertainment options in Las Vegas. This is insane that this would even be burped, because the issue with the A stadium and then potentially moving has been going on as long as I've been a baseball fan, and I can prove it. I have the rule of seven right there. That's the 1979 baseball preview from Sports Illustrated. And I have my theory that you should really start following sports when you're about 7 years old. When I was 7 years old, I got this book. My mom's watching this. She remembers I got this book. All Pro Baseball Stars 80. I got it in 1979. It's a preview for the 1980. And they have, Pete Rose of the Phillies on the cover. They have biographies of all the stars. There's Bobby Grich, the big stars in baseball. And they have the previews. There you go. You see, like the California Angels, Kansas City Royals, all the teams there. But let's see, it says the A's. Doesn't say the Oakland A's. The first line is, it matters not where the A's play. In Denver or Oakland, they're awful. What does that sentence mean? That back when I started following baseball, 1980, the A's were talking about moving out of Oakland, needing to find a solution with their stadium. It's been a while. Yadier Molina was not yet born. Bob Marley was alive when the A's were trying to figure out what to do with their stadium. Do you know where they played when they were trying to figure that out? The Oakland Coliseum. Do you know where they're going to play this year? The Oakland Coliseum. Yadier Molina was born, played a long major league career, retired, and took a couple of years off. And they're still dealing with the same thing. They've had a while to figure this out. And now their solution is to not exist. Their solution is to not exist. Eleanor, what do you think of that? My dog is so disgusted, she couldn't even handle it. If that is even burped, if that is even given the tiniest credence, then Major League Baseball has to do the right thing. Remember how they took the team away from the McCourts when the McCourts were running the Dodgers into bankruptcy? They have to take over the A's. They have to remove Fisher from this. We're going to contract a team because you didn't plan. You're going to contract a team because you're basically trying to do the homework on the bus. If there is a billionaire out there, please buy the A's and come up with an actual solution. If I had 1 billion followers, I would ask you all to send me $1 and I would buy the A's. If you know 1 billion people and would like me to run the A's, please send them to here, Locked On MLB. But this is nothing short of an absolute and complete disgrace. Every time I think the A's couldn't get worse, couldn't sink lower, they grab themselves a shovel and they keep on digging. And here we go. They were talking about back then. This was so long ago. The Pirates were the defending World Series champion. I'm just saying. So let's do a trivia question. This sounds like it could be an easy trivia question, but I thought of it and I had to look it up. The Yankees have won a lot of postseason series. A lot. Just ask any Yankee fan. They'll tell you how many World Series they've won. But what pitcher recorded the last save of a postseason game for the New York Yankees? What Yankee pitcher recorded the last, to this date, postseason save for the New York Yankees? Seems like a simple question. It's a little harder than you think. Do we have anyone left in the comments section? Oh, guess what? My mom is here. My mom remembers this book. Thanks for watching, Mom. Yeah, my mom, I think you bought that book. I think that was in Mrs. Brashani's class. Mrs. Brashani, whose husband was the statistician for the Boston Red Sox. So there you go. There you go. And Justin Lamas said, the league saved us back in 2011. Lamas is a Yankee fan. Thank you, Guggenheim. I hope they can save the A's too. Me too. Well, we're going to be doing these shows every day for this week. And just a reminder that Locked On Sports Today is a 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Happy for Orioles fans, but hoping there's another billionaire out there who could save the A's. We need some green and gold for the A's. This has been Locked On MLB. Happy February, everyone. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.